why Hollywood is so creatively bankrupt.
One of the biggest flops of all time released earlier this year, but barely anyone even noticed. Netflix's The Electric State, with its rumored $320
Never heard of it.
million production budget, was the 13th most expensive film ever made. But the film flopped so badly that most people didn't even know existed. Based on the
I think the method of releasing platform-specific movies is so risky and so likely to fail that I don't get why they do it. I know these companies like Hulu and Netflix, they need to like pump out originals to keep their library big and promote people to continue to, pay for their service. But it's so hard to promote them unless you have like big name actors. It's just like the movie's just not going to do well.
Illustrated novel of the same name, people were expecting more of the same. A journey through a decaying corporate wasteland. And it's definitely what they ended up getting, but probably not in the way they thought. Netflix chose this quiet meditation on our...
Well, that's why the Until Dawn film did so bad too. Well, not bad. The Until Dawn film did okay. If you don't know the game, you've been living under a rock. But the movie isn't the same as the game. And the premise of like surviving until dawn stays the same, but basically the rest of the film is kind of like muddled to figure like a sense of plot outside of just there being like, like Wendigos. And so I think when you're going to when Hollywood recreates games specifically, if you don't nail it on the head, it's bad. A Minecraft movie, it's different because people went in knowing it was a meme, and the things of Minecraft that they showed were still like obviously a part of the game. But when you're trying to recreate like a story game and you fuck that up, oh, dude, that you're gonna get the most hate out of any other fucking movie flop that you could have. Like the Fallout show, doing it great. They're adding fluff, but the fluff they add is awesome. And they're still showing a lot of things within the game because they're just using the game as a basis to guide the story.
Materialistic world, and with no hint of irony, turn it into a goofy CGI-heavy blockbuster. The quiet emotion of the book was thrown out to replace with the big-name actors playing...
Oh, they got Chris Pratt. Yeah, don't watch the film. I don't want to say Chris Pratt's been ruined for me, but if a movie has Chris Pratt, it's probably going to be a bad film. It's not on him. It's just he's so known now that they just hire him. You could say that's an outtake. I love Chris Pratt. I still like Chris Pratt. I love Jack Black. But they're so big now that they're entering what I would call the Dwayne Johnson space. When you get that big, you start getting casted for movies that have really bad plot and just throw money at big names. I think Hollywood needs to focus more on the writing and less on the actors.
Focus grouped characters reading out preachy speeches. This film could easily end up poisoning the careers for lots of people involved. And
I don't think it poisons their careers. It does put a bad note on them, though, that when you think they're in the movie, I don't judge them as an actor. I just think that they're in bad films. It's like a Nicolas Cage effect, where this is happening across a lot of people. And Nicolas Cage got in like a shit financial situation way back, so he just started taking bad films. I don't think Nicolas Cage is a bad actor. I think he's a good actor. I think he just plays in bad films. So now it's becoming where it's like, I like Chris Pratt. I like Anthony Mackie. But when they get cast in these movies, I'm going, this is a bad movie. This is a bad movie. And it's not their fault. It's just the writing's bad. And every person here is famous.
And it's yet another failure for the Russo brothers, who have been looking for success ever since quitting the MCU. The Electric State's failure adds weight to the accusations that they're franchise caretakers, not directors, that they're more skilled at creating someone else's vision rather than making their own. Millie Bobby Brown, who played one of the starring roles, has also come away with a bitter taste in her mouth. Most critics have agreed her acting wasn't very different from the literal robots in the movie, and it doesn't help that she's been typecast in pretty much the same role ever since. While she's seen some success with her appearances in the Godzilla films, it hasn't really been enough to show that she's got what it takes to make it outside the Netflix.
I don't think getting cast in a Godzilla film is showing that you're a good actor either. I think getting cast in any movie that has 10 plus movies in a series, that just means nothing. They're big money churners. Like the Godzilla series, there's like 30 fucking Godzilla films. Like we've gone over that. You could ramble them off. Like if this becomes a video editor, throw up the fucking Godzilla, how many Godzilla movies there are. They just create them. Every other year, there's a new Godzilla film because it's just, you just make the monster look scary and it does well.
Netflix bubble. For Netflix though, the ones actually losing money, the damage has been superficial. We don't know how much the film lost because it didn't sell any tickets anyway. And while it didn't spend very long in the top spot, it was never meant to be Netflix's crown jewel in the first place. Despite its massive cost, it only accounted for 1.5% of their content budget. That's all it was to them. Content for the subscription machine which pulls in billions every month anyway. And so following its awful release, Netflix's shares actually went up slightly, which might help us understand why nobody cared about both the film and how badly it flopped. Because recently big movie flops have become so common these days, it's almost impossible to keep track of them all. Hollywood itself has been floundering ever since the pandemic, with box office numbers down 5% since 2024 and a staggering 38% since 2019. The rot's been creeping in for a lot longer.
Well, and I think people don't watch new shows anymore. Do you guys watch new shows? I think people watch new reality shows and then they reach back. Like, I'm watching Dexter. That shit came out like 20 fucking years ago. I'm like, people look back at old good series and then they just start watching new to them, but not new in general.
Longer than that though. When it comes to box office flops these days, no studio has seen more of them than Disney, and for them, it began over a decade ago. It first became visible with the easily forgettable John Carter. From the beginning, John Carter was meant to create a whole new franchise for Disney. Adapted from the Barstool series of books, Disney had nearly a dozen volumes to work with. The books had laid the foundations for a good chunk of science fiction, plenty of room for sequels, and even merchandise. It could have been Dune nearly a decade before Dune was even made. The problems though came in production. The director Andrew Stanton, who had seen major success directing Pixar films, just wasn't
Wall-E and Better Call... Bro, he directed Finding Dory. Oh my god, I don't care about that film. Wall-E, Finding Nemo, Better Call Saul, and Stranger Things.
happy with how this was turning out. He pushed for more reshoots and rewrites, but they cost far more than for animated films, and they never really made the difference. As costs overran, the budget just kept on inflating and inflating until it ended up overshadowing everything else. Meanwhile, Disney had no real idea about how to market it and actually get
What is that thing? That looks like a weird pit bull. If you hit it with like a Rick and Morty injection, that would make it mutate. What the fuck?
people excited. The Barstool series had been immensely popular in its day, so popular that most sci-fi knowingly or unknowingly borrowed its ideas. But by 2012, all of the story's ideas and plot points had already been exploited and built on by other properties like Star Wars. Disney were pretty much trying to remake.
Well, I mean, that also goes back to like, do you think there's going to be a block in creativity from writers or at least just movies in general? Because when you actually look into it, what do they say? There's like 7 stories that can ever be told, and it's just everything in between is fluff. There's only like 7 stories that you can tell in life. What happens in that story changes, and that's it. Name them. Like a love story, you could have a revenge story. Like, that's what it always is. It'll be like love, revenge, like disaster. 7 basic plot points that all movies go through. Overcoming the monster, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return, tragedy, and rebirth. And that's it. Every movie that you know of falls into those films.
Star Wars, but they couldn't use its setting on Mars as the marketing because previous Mars-based films had all flopped as well. They couldn't even name it after the book it was based on because calling it the Princess of Mars would turn off the mostly male audience Disney were trying to capture. So Disney ended up with a film that needed to make $600 million just to break even, but barely made even half that amount, losing an estimated $200 million. Stanton went back to the animated world of Pixar and Disney's chairman resigned. So you would expect their success with the Avengers later that same year to seal the deal. But while it definitely solidified their plans for a full Marvel transition, Disney have never been good at learning lessons the first time. I started this YouTube channel because I wanted to be able to share my ideas and thoughts with the rest of the world. And I know some of you want to do this too, but in 2013, they released The Lone Ranger. This also had lots of the same problems as John Carter, adapting an IP that was far older than its intended audience with an overinflated budget and confused marketing. The result—
I don't even think that it's bad for the ideas that they're doing. It's not like, oh, the idea's too old. That's a problem, and they shouldn't be making movies that they know probably won't do great. But at the same time, it's the reason it's bad is because their budgets are way too fucking high. I understand with inflation, things are obviously going to go up, and movies and production companies in general have to get bigger and better to compete and, you know, kind of fit this standard that people have as a viewing experience. But at the same time, like, every movie that comes out now is like $200, $300, $400 million. Like, you're just spewing out movies that are worth $500 million on average. Like, why? Why don't these big companies shoot 10 films out for 20 mil, 30 mil a pop, and then you get good ones? And I think that's what you see with like lower fucking companies. I don't know how much A24 films cost. Like, how much was the Friendship film? But I feel like A24 and like all these other like indie-esque like horror film companies are like shooting smaller shots, and yeah, they get a lesser return. Like, they might make a $30 million movie that makes $100 million, but they're still in the green.
Results were largely the same as well, a massive loss for the studio and the final nail in the coffin for their live-action semi-original blockbuster dreams. It showed Disney that to avoid flops, they had to lean on Marvel and other IPs as much as possible. And for a long time, this worked like a dream. Marvel dominated the box office, even the worst entries made hundreds of millions, and despite people predicting an end of the superhero era for years, it never actually came. The MCU culminated in two of the biggest, most—
How much did Endgame gross? $858 million. Spider-Man No Way Home is the next most popular Marvel film. I would have assumed it was Endgame, Infinity War, yeah, maybe BP, then Deadpool and Wolverine. That's shocking. I feel like that's so new. I didn't think it did that well.
Biggest, most profitable movies of all time with Infinity War and Endgame. Then, even after they had been and gone, even when they were getting worse reviews and fans were getting tired, later MCU films still made money. That was until the Marvels. You could see why Disney had kept their money machine going for so long, but by 2023, the MCU was running on fumes. The biggest actors had now left, and the replacements failed to properly—
Oh, but they brought him back. For a different role. Oh, brother.
Fill their shoes. This had been coming for a while. Films like Thor: Love and Thunder or the second Doctor Strange film had been profitable, but they'd also met resistance from fans for—
Okay, people shit on Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I thought that movie was fucking great. I saw it in theaters, and I love Doctor Strange in general, and I watched it with like 6 of my friends, and we walked out of the film, and like 4 of them were like, this shit sucks. I was like, that was a good movie. What are you talking about? Like, I liked it.
Poor effects, repetitive themes, and tired, forgettable plots. Other films like the third Ant-Man film failed as well, but that had always been a weaker part of the franchise. While John Carter had flopped because audiences had no idea what they were going to actually see, the Marvels failed because of the opposite reason. People knew exactly what they were going to see without any of the bits that made it worth watching.
I think we just need the next Morbius. Film. That'll really fucking re-hype Marvel as a series.
Audiences didn't recognize characters from the MCU TV shows that were making their first cinematic appearance. Despite how hard Marvel had tried to push Captain Marvel as the new big superhero, both the casual and the longtime fans weren't especially keen on her either. The classic MCU formula was there, as well as their habit of pandering to empty politics, but the actors, the excitement, the anticipation, even the CGI just wasn't there anymore. Even the name was just milquetoast. The Marvels to most people seemed like the most bog standard name possible for an MCU film, a representation that the film had no draw beyond having the same name behind its previous installments,
And I think they go so big every time because they had the huge success on Endgame that they have to go bigger and better. Just focus on like small, stupid heroes. You know how funny it would be to have like a fucking film on the Gambit, the fucking character that Channing Tatum played in Deadpool? Like, you know how good that would be to have just like a whole central focused film about like just small town guys.
Why, unsurprisingly, it died at the box office. It might have even helped if it was controversial, but nobody cared about the film.
Jeff the Shark film. I don't know how they would make a film about Jeff the Shark. He doesn't talk. He's a walking land shark.
For any reason whatsoever. For the second time after a failed Ant-Man sequel, Disney burnt money on a Marvel film. With an estimated loss of $200 million once it was all
oh my god.
said and done, it would only get worse. After a decade and a bit of mega hits off the back of the MCU and other properties, Disney was just left floundering. They faced the same problems they had in 2012 when John Carter flopped, only this time they had nowhere else left to turn. As we've seen, their attempts since then to stabilize things just haven't worked either. And it would be too easy to make this whole video about Disney with how many flops they've made recently, but
have any of you guys watched She-Hulk? I remember how much hate that got when it came out. I've never seen it. I've never seen a minute of She-Hulk. Like, what are they twerking in that?
before we get too caught up with them, we ought to focus on some of the other studios for a second. Looking at Disney, the other studios started to get their own ideas. First, they saw them bomb over and over again when making anything halfway original. Then they saw them completely reverse their fortunes by betting big on a couple of franchises and winning the jackpot. Right around the time that the MCU started taking off, the other studios were already getting their plans together for their own cinematic universes. Sony were no strangers to franchise fodder. They'd been making buckets of money from their ownership of the James Bond IP. Skyfall alone had pulled in over $1 billion in 2012, but the franchise was limited to just one film every few years. They couldn't just pump them out, so they needed something with lots of—
But that's good! Just fucking stick to it! Why do we have to have a 30 fucking movie series that has 30 films that are combining and intertwining together, and sometimes they make appearances with everybody else because, oh my god, then you have to fucking rope people in and they feel like they have to be a part of the story. But then it gets so complicated that you start jamming in more films that are a part of the same universe and people just stop watching. Because now it's too much.
Different main characters. So, like lots of other studios, they naturally
I like Venom.
Drifted towards superheroes. While Warner Bros. Had been having their own problems with getting the DC universe started, Sony had so much less to work with. While they did still have Spider-Man, that was about it.
And you know what? You know how crazy this is? Venom 1 is one of my favorite superhero films, and I haven't seen Venom 3. Still.
And they were already halfway through their own separate trilogy. The Amazing Spider-Man films had been dreamt up before the need for a whole cast of different characters to spawn their own spin-off films, but instead of letting that play out, they tried to turn the second film of the trilogy into a vehicle to promote a new extended universe. While the film turned out generally okay and made a respectable profit, the reviews were poor. It wasn't a great result and definitely not enough to base 20 other films off of it. So Sony took a step back. Clearly they couldn't try and reboot Spider-Man yet again. The character is pretty much dead to them. Instead, they finally let Marvel use him in the MCU as long as they got most of the money. It would make them billions, obviously, but one slice of the cake wasn't enough for them. They still wanted their own one as well. Sony still had the rights to some of the Spider-Man villains knocking around. Naturally, they just chose the most popular one, Venom, and tried to make him into his own franchise. And while the first film was decently profitable and they managed to squeeze a few sequels out of the final result, it wasn't enough for a whole cinematic universe. The proof came with our next big flop, Morbius. By now,
well, Morbius was just so fucking stupid. It was just, dude, it was just a bad movie. Like, he's like a bat guy. He fucking killed. He's the bad guy. He's the bad bat guy. He's a fucking shitty person. In Morbius, he fucking kills more people than the bad guy. He, like, murders people.
Everyone knows the story, but what makes it even more tragic was how much hope Sony had had for the film. With Venom having done fairly well, another good Spider-Man spin-off film would have given them a real chance at a proper franchise. But unfortunately, production took an ungodly amount of—
God, it was just so corny, dude. The villain, look at that. You're telling me that's like, oh, that's hard. Oh, how scary. He just looks like Voldemort.
Spider-Man spin-off film would have given them a real chance at a proper franchise. But unfortunately, production took an ungodly amount of time. From its planning phase in 2017 all the way to its release in 2022, the momentum had disappeared years before Morbius ever hit the screens. Really, the film had pretty much everything working against it. A terrible domestic box office of $73 million and even worse reviews led to Sony pulling it from theaters shortly after release. But it was so poorly received and so many people were talking about it online.
Wait, what? No. The higher ups at Sony thought that Morbius was good, like, because people were like, oh, Morbin time. It only got $250,000.
$1,000 in tickets the second time around. It makes it one of, if not the only major release to bomb twice in a row. You can start to notice a pattern emerging. When studios try to start their own cinematic universes, it often goes horribly wrong.
Bro, they all lost money.
We already briefly mentioned Warner Bros. And the troubles with the DC extended universe. But
Shazam 2 was terrible. Aquaman 2 I haven't seen.
Universal also tried their hand at recreating
Wait, what is this? The new Flash movie lost $200 million?
the success of Marvel. While the other studios were messing around with superheroes, Universal didn't have the rights to many of those. What they did have was the ownership of tons of old horror movie creatures just like the Mummy. With those, they hoped to set up the Dark Universe, a whole franchise of rebooted monster films. By 2010,
Who the fuck wants to watch Frankenstein, bro? Are you kidding me? Like, why are we hiring 80-year-old fucking decrepit people at these movies, at these movie companies? Why are they going, yeah, let's reboot Frankenstein?
2012, they decided to reboot the old Mummy franchise. Brendan Fraser and the characters that people knew and loved were out, but what would come in their place? The Mummy reboot had to both outperform the old Mummy movies in the eyes of the public, whilst also setting up a whole new franchise. Universal wanted things to move quickly and they didn't want to miss the bus, but after chewing through a few different directors and scripts, years later they weren't anywhere near close to release. It was only when Tom Cruise was locked in as the star in late 2015 that things got moving, but it's still—
Oh, so this was for people 50 plus, chat. That's why we didn't hear this. Tom Cruise is the lead. You know, it's marketed towards like single mothers and fucking old men.
It took another 2 years before they finally released the movie. At the end of the day, audiences went to the theatre and saw what amounted to a Tom Cruise film. After getting hired, he had pretty much taken over the production and direction of the movie, which really clashed with the dark universe of monsters and the feeling that Universal had wanted to set up. Meanwhile, the humour and the life of the old films was also nowhere to be seen. It pleased nobody and bombed so hard that the whole cinematic universe was cancelled. Universal would later say that they had given up on cinematic—
We gotta go back. You know what's gonna save Hollywood? The Barbie film transferring to like just toy-based movies. Let's make an Uno film where they die if they lose. High stakes Uno. Let's make a film of hungry hippos, but they come to life and start eating people.
universes altogether, opting to go back to standalone films instead. Looking at it all from this perspective, you can see how Hollywood has played itself into a corner. The popular franchises make hundreds of millions or billions in profits for the studio that owns them. Meanwhile, original films or films trying to start new franchises do incredibly poorly in comparison. Studios have lost faith in original blockbusters.
And like, how have they not seen this though? How have they not? Like, why are they not putting this together? They just keep trying to fucking reboot shit.
Last year in 2024, the top 14 films in the domestic box office were
all sequels. We talked about this the other day.
Original. You have to go down to the 15th spot in the American box office before you find a film that just isn't a sequel, reboot, or some other kind of franchise fodder. The studios are facing a reckoning for this now though. They've been happy to shovel out the same kinds of films over and over again, slowly losing the respect of the audience over time. And why wouldn't they after all if people keep watching? It could easily prove to be a fatal mistake, as no franchise lasts forever, and studios like Disney are now an awful—
Oh, well, the Joker film being a fucking musical had to be the dumbest thing ever. I don't know why they thought— Didn't they say that Joaquin Phoenix took that not knowing it was a musical? I don't know if that's true or not. I feel like when they came out with the Joker, or Joker 2, they said that he was like, yeah, well, like, I'll do it. And they were like, yeah, it's going to be a musical with Lady Gaga.
Positions. Star Wars has lost its luster, the MCU has fallen off hard, and so Disney has fallen back on the classics to get by, literally. But now even their live action reboots are just going awfully wrong. The recent Snow White film is by far the worst of them in both box office performance and its overall quality. Other studios have all but panicked, throwing money at whoever's able to turn a profit. When Joker made over $1 billion in 2019, Warner Bros. Were happy to write a blank check for the sequel. The only problem was that the people who made that film decided to do as much damage to its legacy as possible. It seemed like they went intentionally out of their way to try and annoy the fans of the first movie, turning the sequel into this weird musical takedown of everything the previous film tried to do. And the sequel had around 4 times the budget, but made less than a fifth of the first film in revenue. This isn't the only way that Hollywood is turning—
Who the fuck wants to watch a musical? I'm sorry, man. It's like, yeah, it's its own niche it's its own niche market. But who the fuck's like, yeah, let's go to a fucking movie series where they sing every fucking 10 seconds. Where like they're mid-conversation. Oh, was your day bad? Well, I didn't have a lovely day, but I think that tomorrow will be my time. Shut the fuck up!
against the audience in the face of this new reality. Lots blame the general public for the lack of originality.
Because you can't get into a film when every time something really emotional happens, they just start singing. Because it detaches you from the story. Like if they're sad and they're like, well, I was once, and then everything behind them blurs. I had a bad day. And they like look into the camera. I want to punch my screen in and leave the theater.
At the top. This year has seen lots of original flops, while franchise and spin-off films are the only ones doing well. The argument goes that Hollywood is just reacting to what people want. They aren't to blame for what the audiences reward. But this doesn't really seem right either. Instead, you can explain the drop in originality by looking at the situation on the ground floor instead. Going to the theater today is expensive. Tickets are generally around double what a month of a subscription service costs. So if you're gonna go and see—
Yeah, if you're somebody that goes to the movies, I would honestly say get like whatever movie theater you have. You know how they have like those monthly payment plans where you could go see as many movies as you want, but it's only like however much a month? If you're somebody that sees movies often, just do that. Like I only go to the movies like once every 6 months, so I'll just pay for the ticket. But if you're like somebody that loves going to the movies, and then even if you just have free time and you just don't go because it's expensive, if you're it's like what, like $20 a month, and a ticket's probably like 15 already, 20 already. Maybe it's 30 a month, $300, $360 a year. But if you go see fucking 45 movies, then it's worth it.
See a film, it better be good. This means that people are going to fall back on what they know or just on word of mouth. If everyone's talking about a movie, it gets the seal of approval and casual moviegoers might actually go see it whether it's original or not. Otherwise, people want a familiar name so that they know they just won't be throwing their money away. What's more, ticket sales have gone down anyway. Ever since the lockdowns in 2019, sales have been—
Oh my god, it's not the fucking lockdown, bruh. Ever since the lockdown, people are like, yeah, since COVID, people have been really sheltered inside. No, it's because streaming services just come out with originals, and you know that if it comes out in the movie, you'd rather just go do some other shit because in fucking 3 weeks, it's gonna be on fucking Netflix, or Hulu, or HBO, or whatever, Peacock. It's gonna be out in a fucking streaming service in 3 weeks anyway. Why the fuck am I gonna go to a movie theater and watch it?
Been falling, and even in 2024, they fell compared to 2023. Studios went into hibernation over lockdown, hoping for a big resurgence in films when the restrictions were lifted. But instead, it just gave the streaming services an opportunity to capture the market. Which all brings us back full circle to Netflix and the electric state. As movie flops go, it's a pretty unsatisfying one. With pretty much no cultural impact whatsoever and no real way to know how much money is really lost, the days of the massive cinema flops might come to an end soon. Instead, the terrible films of the future—
I wonder how they gauge that too, because they don't make money off of people watching it. I'm assuming internally they do a lot of stuff based on views to see if that keeps people in. Because the idea of a Netflix original is it makes you want to keep Netflix and then use it to watch their own films, as well as some of the things that they buy and pay for the rights for. But like, what is profitable for them? I wish I could see the back end of the numbers of like how Hulu and Netflix originals do, as to how they're determining if that makes money or not.
It might just fade away like the electric state, sitting at the bottoms of timelines and recommendation queues. Really, it takes away from the whole beauty of the cinematic flop. It's the only place left we get to see massive corporations fail spectacularly, in a mostly transparent and measurable way. So while we might be in the golden age of movie flops right now, hopefully it won't also end up being the final chapter as well.
It's not gonna be the final chapter. I think we're just gonna be in the fucking trenches for movies for a while, and then eventually the companies will start making good shit. Count me down 30 seconds, then we'll hop into the next video.